because I served in it. I understand it. I have an idea of it. And I actually agree with Hassan, who earlier said if they ignore the United States, it puts a better situation for Iran to actually do something to Israel. I agree with him 1000%. And that's where the Iran should do. But if Iran wants to shut down the Straits of Hormuz, you're going to find some type of issue somewhere militarily where people aren't getting their economic validity that they need from the gas station that you called it, not me. And that oil, especially some of which being China at 90% of Iran's oil goes to them. So there's a lot more finite things here that need to be looked at instead of your generalized terms in that of a video game that you think that there's a hundred battleships somewhere hiding. It's just what it is. I don't care about your ideology. I'm talking about what Mr. Simon asked for an opinion based off of actual knowledge, not a video game. Now go ahead and go off.
Again, you're just not that important and you're ill-informed. Even the Ansar Allah has struck those aircraft carriers that you worship. They're not a source of strength, they're a source of weakness, and they're a massive cost and a burden. Modern warfare now entails having steady access, good access to superior drones, superior missiles, a good air defense system, and the US has none of the three. They don't make hypersonics, they're not mass producing those. Their air defense system sucks. They've been breached numerous times, and Iran makes better drones, so that makes them inferior. It's
Hey,
that
truth.
simple. So you can sit there and worship those liabilities on the water, which even Ansar Allah can struck anytime they want. So can China, so can Iran. That's not
Hey,
superiority.
truth.
And you don't know how many battles they had because your information is dated from 20 years ago by your own admission. When I served, well, what was the last time you served? What do you even know? Are you getting like declassified documents, defense documents? I don't think you are. And Iran's been preparing and building more and more over just the last 10 years alone. You didn't know about the 500 microsubs that they have. They can sink those aircraft carriers whenever they want. They can do surprise attacks whenever they want in the Straits of Hormuz because you didn't know that. All right, just as you don't know, there's a whole lot of military bases there, a whole lot of missiles there. There's its own navy there, plus the subs that can attack anytime. And maybe they don't have a nuke now. I guess we'll find out sooner than later. You know what? The U.S. and Israel both guaranteed Iran has every reason in the world to produce a nuke so they can become like a North Korea, and then people like you won't fuck with it anymore. They'll learn that, hey, you know what? Maybe we need to learn a little something more about countries like, say, China, Russia, and Iran, rather than think we can just steamroll over any country as we did in the Middle East, the last 20 years. Because these countries are a little bigger and tougher, and they'll fight back, and it's going to hurt. It's going to lead to a whole lot of American servicemen dying, but people like you don't care because you're willing to watch the goy die for the Jewish war. That's just who you are, and that's why you'll never call out the JQ, because you sold out a long time ago, and that's why you fought in those Jewish wars, because you have zero morality and you're a spineless coward. It's okay to kill Middle Easterns because you look at them as subhuman because you're a racist fuck. You serve the Jew, you earn the shekels, and you're proud of it. And you're sitting there worshipping aircraft carriers. That's the extent of your knowledge, dated and backwards.
Hey, Chad, I got a question for you, and I love facts. Aircraft carriers and Strait of Hormuz. Okay, what happened in Bab el-Mandeb against the Yemenis? What objective did the Americans achieve during that war?
I'm sorry, you cut out. I didn't hear the end of your question.
What objectives did the Americans achieve in Bab el-Mandeb in Yemen with their aircraft carriers and their planes and the Israeli attacks and the B-2s and whatnot? You say you're on the field and you understand. What did they achieve against Yemen?
Nothing.
Okay, if they can't achieve anything in Yemen with all of this, what are they going to achieve in Iran? Logically, we're talking logic.
You know what the U.S. Navy said when they gave up and came to a ceasefire? They're like, we had a really hard time with Ansar Allah's Navy. They kept hitting us. We couldn't do anything about it. U.S. Navy servicemen and captains said this. They agreed to a deal, to a ceasefire, say, please just don't strike the U.S. one, go for Israel, because they couldn't beat them, even though they struck and killed Yemeni civilians, because that's just unfortunately how the U.S. rolls. They have no problems wiping out civilians or torturing them in prisons, which Buddy Boy here is okay with, because he was a part of that. He's proud of his service. I'm a vet. Even though 22 vets a day commit suicide because U.S. doesn't give two shits about vets once they hit disability or, they start having PTSD.
Hey, true.
So those are the facts. The U.S. couldn't take on Ansar Allah, they can't take out Iran.
Truth teller, 1 second, brother. Look, Chad, what he's saying is don't underestimate.
You don't need to simp for this guy. Just
No. Don't underestimate America. Why are you doing that? That's just foolish.
I didn't underestimate
You are.
America.
You're indirectly saying they're so
You don't have
inferior.
to simp. don't have
No. You are, and
well,
it's
I didn't
inaccurate.
say they're
It's
inferior.
inaccurate.
You're putting
Look,
words
I
in
think
my mouth.
what he's trying to do is give a
Putting words in my
fair, proportionate response to you. And yeah, of course, he's bigging up America for whatever reason, but it is a massive threat. America is all powerful still. They are a declining empire. However, they can still pack a punch, right? You agree to that?
They didn't pack a punch against Yemen. This is what we're talking about. We're being logical here.
You don't have to be listen, you don't have to simp and be a retard right now. No one said that the U.S. isn't a force to be reckoned with. I'm just saying that modern warfare entails more than just aircraft carriers. There's a lot more nuance here. But they still pack a punch. Do you need that validation or something?
No.
Like, what's wrong with you? Are you
You're
just trying to
actually
qualify your
misleading the
questions, Israel?
viewers.
Bill, you don't have
You're
to say.
misleading the
I can call
viewers.
out your
You're
position.
making them believe
You and
that
me is. I
America
can
has
call out.
no
I can
power,
call out a
no
few on.
ability. That's not
Yeah,
true.
sure, but I didn't say they have no power. I didn't say they have more
You
power. They're
may as well
falling
say it.
behind
You may as well
because
say it.
unfortunately Jews are decimated. Well, I'll say I'll say what I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna frame it the way you are because you're just trying to put in some traps here.
No, I
I've
don't think you
stated
should be
very clearly. I
idiotic
said
and
they have nukes.
immature, and the way you talk is just
I think the
pathetic, right?
idiotic one here,
No. You
is the
need to
one
be
simping for
realistic.
a
The
weak argument.
reality
They couldn't
is
even take out Astro.
America can wreak havoc
Look,
on
bud,
Iran and in the region if they are
then why
fully
don't they? Then
invested.
why couldn't they do that against Russia? Why didn't they do it against
They're not.
Russia?
They're not
What
fully
happened there?
invested in against Russia. So what are you
Oh,
talking about?
really?
No,
If
they
they
definitely
are,
are fully
250,
invested now.
$250 billion invested.
Guys, let's go to truth right now. I think truth is, he's giving a perspective which is based upon the reality of the last few battles. Now, just the whole perception that, US is powerful, like everyone knows that, but truth is trying to give a perspective that the terms of engagement on battlefields have changed, and we've got evidence from the last few engagements. So let's hear his argument, and then we'll go back and forth. Truth, double mute.
Look, I'll try to recap this in simple terms for the simple minds. What I've stated here is that modern warfare entails having steady access and steady production of good missiles, good drones, a good air defense system. Yeah, it's useful to have an air force, but they're very expensive to maintain and not as useful as you think. And of course, good intelligence. Iran's got all those things going for it, like they're not. And they do have a navy they haven't even exposed to the world yet. They do have an air force they haven't shown the world yet because they don't want to. They don't need to at the moment because they may be having to prepare for something bigger in case the U.S. does go full scale, because that's how a chess player operates. Simple minds just don't understand that because they're busy playing checkers. They don't realize that you don't need to show your whole hand like Israel has and then get beat convincingly. That it's embarrassing to the point where after 3 days they're begging America, Germany, UK, and a coalition of them are willing to come bail it out, despite the U.S. investing everything and giving everything it wants, investing hundreds of billions of dollars, some say into the trillions. I mean, it depends on which report you want to look at. Well over 300 billion into the trillions, and investing in its army, its air force, its navy, its nukes. What does Israel not have? And they even did the Abraham Accords and got rid of every single Arab state that was supporting it. So you've got a network of countries that support Israel, in addition to them being defended, in the airspace of Cyprus and Iraq. And Syria is open for business as well, plus the U.S. aircraft carriers that are already there. They're making such a difference, and yet Iranian missiles are still able to breach all those airspaces and strike Israel at will. If they can strike Israel at will, you think they don't have any ICBMs? Well, they kind of hint that they do. They could strike America with this Basar mat that Russia has next door. They don't have it already, but they're not disclosing their full missile salvo. Why should they? That's not how the chess player operates. But what I can tell you is the guys at the top in the Pentagon know that's why they're negotiating and not going full-scale war, because there's too much information asymmetry. Those bases were way too deep. There was no chance they were going to penetrate them. They tried anyway and failed. Ferdo's still operational, so is Natanz, so is the ones in Esfahan. That was a failed mission. So the U.S. is so great, so amazing. They took out 3 bases, dismantled the system. Why is it business as usual in Iran? Why within a few hours they're able to strike back hard? Iran's not Iraq. That's the part you don't understand. They're much bigger, much more sophisticated, an ancient culture that somehow finds a way to keep kicking despite watching other empires come and go, including their own. They're still there. The U.S. is 250 years old. All you demonstrate is arrogance and ignorance and an inability and an open mind and wanting to actually learn. about your enemy and what they actually have. Instead, you guess they have 67 battleships. Why don't you just say 66? If Jews like that number, you probably like it too. You represent them. It's not 66. They've got over 2,000 just destroyers. They've got over 500 subs. You know nothing about their Navy because they developed it the last 10 years when you were out of service, bud, and you weren't reading the reports anymore. Your information goes back to maybe the 2000s when they barely had a Navy and probably had very little Air Force, going back to the Tomcats and the MiGs. No one cares about that stuff, and they also had some Sukhoi 2024s. I think 24s is when I have to go back and look. Doesn't matter. The point is, yeah, they had the Asian Air Force. Now they have the new Air Force. That's why they couldn't develop it because of all those sanctions. So they went to the Russians to get that license to build their own fighter jets now, which again aren't as useful as people think they are. You can worship the carrier all you like. They can be struck whenever Iran or China wants, and they have been, because Ansarallah has proven they can be struck. They're sitting ducks. So no one's scared of your carriers. You can go and spend $1 trillion on your defense budget. Doesn't mean you're the best army in the world. You can still be beat. You couldn't beat the Russians so far. You haven't beat the Iranians. There's a 2 L's just in the last 3-4 years. Cry hard, cope harder. Andrew, if you want to comment, feel free. You can add on to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You actually served just about it.
All right.
This chimp over here thinks.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Chad, I hear you. You're Navy, retired Navy here. I had over 20 years active duty, submarine warfare, logistics, Navy intel. And here's the thing. Let's talk about aircraft carriers. I'm a submariner. The United States never, a Navy, I'm talking Navy, never would leave the battleship. The great and mighty battleship ruled the world until an incident. And Chad, you know what I'm saying is true. What happened in Midway Island, the Battle of Midway, the battleship became extinct. The aircraft ruled. Unfortunately, that's 80 years ago, and now these carriers are dinosaurs. Now, let's be honest. No one in the Navy is very tribal. The Navy consists of 3 tribes: the air, surface, and submarines. The submarine community knows. The submarine community has always gotten the lion's share. At the Pentagon, I worked at the Pentagon, I supported it, I was totally there. And every time we went before the Senate Armed Services Committee, the surface Navy, they were begging for their little scraps. And then it came, the air community was constantly in battle with the submarine community. Why? Because the air community knew that they were going extinct. Their carriers are now freaking extinct. On a Cold War patrol in the North Sea, our submarine was running a screen for a carrier battle group, and the Soviets I'm talking about, knew that they had the advantage because they had they had Akulas in there, they had Victor 3s in there, they had Alphas in there, and our little carrier battle group was a sitting duck, but we were running a screen with 2 other new fast attack submarines. Okay, where am I going with this? Truth, I don't know Truth personally. Honestly, I don't, but I've been listening to him for over a week. Ouch, the frickin' Truth hurts. He's got it right. The carriers are extinct. Now, does anyone know anything about the Straits of Hormuz? Does anyone know about the Persian Gulf? The Straits of Hormuz, and this is where Chad is absolutely correct. The Navy must go full tilt bore attack to keep the Straits of Hormuz open. It's Navy doctrine. It's on 5 different orders of battle. There's no question asked. The problem is our carriers are sitting ducks. Have you seen a massive surge of the 7th Fleet and the 5th Fleet like we did in Iraq? Nope. Have you seen the 6th Fleet surge? Nope. There's no logistic support moving for a major confrontation with Iran because we know we cannot do it. How about our submarines? I know I personally worked and was on the staff. I was hand-picked for the staff of Commander Submarine Force Atlantic. Daniel Leland Cooper hand-picked me. I was on his staff. I was sent to take care of hotspot problems, and they were talking. I sat down with General Robert Kingston in his home in Mount Vernon. The Persian Gulf is extremely shallow water. No fast attack submarines going to go in there, so the Navy knows we have to go littoral warfare. The Persians were way ahead on that, and their drones. Truth, jump in here, but now we're fighting a different war. Even your deep attack Blue Navy submarine SSNs, only thing we have left, let's go full blown here. Take off the gloves. The only thing left is full blown mutually assured destruction. And Chad was right. You want to F around with the U.S. Navy? Okay. Well, guess what? Two big guys in the block going to go have a knockdown drag out. The fist fight doesn't work. Let's go to guns. Never bring a gun to never bring a knife to a gunfight. It's going to go nuclear because I guarantee you the Navy's not going to go in there with conventional warfare. Their carriers are freaking useless. We can't bring attack submarines in there. I mean, only thing we can do is long-range standoff SSBNs, tactical, conventional hits, strikes, and, God forbid, nuclear TLAMs, but nothing to go in there and go toe-to-toe with the Straits of Hormuz. It's going to be a threat, like, you open it up or we're going to beat you up. Come and show us. It's going to have to be nuclear. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Andrew. Let's get the other side and then Truth add to it as well. Chad, did you want to respond to any of that?
Yeah. The point I made to when your original statement, Simon, was just that. And I think Hassan was saying it, that the United States military and Navy is very powerful. And at the end of the day, and thank you for that, Mr. Andrew. He went into some great points about the depths, and he went into the minutia of what is the Persian Gulf. And I appreciate that because he's right. But at the same time, my original statement was the Straits of Hormuz, by shutting it down, will escalate it to a point. And I said, you're going to send the supersonics into us. That's going to bring on to that escalation, which is exactly what we're going to do. This isn't about me being about the United States military. I'm just speaking on the provocation and what could happen. And even Andrew said it. It'll be a bloody ass skin-on-skin fight right there in those Straits of Hormuz. I'm familiar with what we can and can't do there. So my original statement, and even though what's his name was trying to make it out that I was ideological, I was speaking to those actual things that Andrew just spoke to, is that this will escalate into a situation where the Straits of Hormuz is. And I agreed with Hassan that if you ignored the United States military, you have your opportunity to continue to weaken Israel. And as a matter of fact, I want to go one further. I do not believe that those attacks last night did anything to those centrifuges. I don't think that through that granite and concrete that they use to build that based off of intelligence. So to be honest with you, I'm glad that Soleimani put up there that Netanyahu can't say that they were taken out. I don't believe they were, based off the numbers of bombs that they actually said they put on target. So again, I'm not sitting here simping for anybody other than speaking to what is capable between the United States Navy and the Straits of Hormuz. Would, I believe, and I think Andrew just said it, would be a spark that would make it a much bigger situation. That's my only point to it.
Okay,
And,
so
and I'd just like to add to that very briefly. I'm exactly the same. I've got no sympathy, no fight for the American army in this. I'm just merely pointing out the fact it will cause some issues. That's an absolute fact. And I think Truth Teller just needs to, stop getting so excited. Maybe change his nappy once in a while and just calm down a bit and listen to people.
okay, let me summarize where we're at. I think we've hit somewhat of a consensus. I'll go to you, Truth. I think we've hit somewhat of a consensus. The U.S. involvement hasn't really moved the needle in any way, shape, or form in this conflict. It looks like the real battle would be if this escalates to the Strait of Hormuz. It will have a massive economic impact, and what it seems like from all different perspectives on the stage and the military side, the only way that can be resolved is through massive escalation, and due to the inferiority of US engagement in this particular battle, it would have to go to something radical like some kind of nuclear operation in order to bring this one back under control, just because of the nature of it. We'll go over to truth
So
now.
Simon, just before you go to truth, just to add to what you're saying, tweets in the nest that Iran shutting down. So this is what I looked into, and this is what I got. But I know you guys have spoken about it, but I think if you can expand on the specific implications in US, Europe, and various other countries. But this is what I found: Iran shutting down the Strait of Hormuz will result in the global catastrophe. LNG supply disrupted, especially to Europe and Asia. Europe faces renewed energy crisis, higher gas and electricity prices, global oil and gas prices spike, worsening inflation worldwide, strategic petroleum reserves likely released by US and allies, petrochemical and refined fuel supply chains disrupted, that's diesel, jet fuel, and plastics, stock markets tumble, especially in energy intensive and transport sectors, central bank faces pressure, rates hike may return despite recession fears. Risk of global recession increases, especially for energy dependent nations. US and allied military responses likely. Tanker traffic halts or diverts, causing global shipping delays. Shipping insurance cost surge, Strait classified as a high risk war zone. Limited alternative export routes. Saudi and UAE pipelines are insufficient. China and India face energy import shocks, seeking emergency alternatives. Europe will scramble for LNG from US, Norway, and Algeria. Russia benefits from price spikes and energy market disruption. UN actions likely stalled by Russia and China vetoes, diplomacy strained. US gas prices may hit $5 to $7 a gallon, triggering public backlash. And then your US election years, politics inflamed with energy policy in the spotlight. In terms of the things I mentioned, if there's anything like Simon you disagree with or agree with, or if you want to expand on it, because there's mental implications, and I think each one of them needs to be looked into and teetered out. Jump in, Simon.
Yeah, the bit that I just add to that is the fact that America is currently doing lots of auctions to refinance its debt. It's got a lot of short-term debt, and it needs lower interest rates in order to roll over that debt. At the moment, at the best, it's currently got an interest rate of average 3.3% on its debt, $10 trillion to roll over. And the lowest that it can refinance for is just above around 4% to 4.2%. And that's just based upon short-term debt. That would mean it would have to be refinanced within 3 weeks or a month or 2 months. If you want the long-term debt, there's nothing the Federal Reserve can do about long-term debt. It's purely market-driven. And that's currently at about 4.5% to 5%. If that goes up as a result of this, if it goes towards 6-7%, America's in a complete death spiral in terms of debt. And that will have implications on bank reserves, and it would likely lead to an intervention from the Federal Reserve, which at the moment, because the credit rating of US has been downgraded by all three major providers, it would lead to America looking like a distressed debt at the moment, if that were to happen. And there's nothing that can be done about the long-term interest rate. You can only control the short-term interest rate, which means that America would essentially be refinancing its debt every month and completely dependent upon the short-term markets, which means that every move on the battlefield would impact the credit rating of the United States of America. The other thing to point out,
Simon, what would happen? Sorry, do continue. What happens to the, just for the audience, because this is like an average American, an average Brit, an average European, generally speaking, I hear on the space listening. What impact does it have on them?
the impact is that we'd be in inflation is the major impact. It would be a return to inflation. In fact, it would be stagflation because it would be declining growth. The job market in America is pretty good at the moment. In Europe, it's not too bad. But it would likely lead to more and more companies looking to take off jobs, declining growth with increase in inflation, which is stagflation. That's the worst of all worlds. That's a market that the average person hasn't experienced yet. And I don't think that there are many tools that the Federal Reserve has up its sleeve to prevent that at the moment because the market's running away. And it would be similar as well, just like the Russia-Ukraine situation. People would start trying to stockpile gas. They would start trying to, get it in. And also, we'd end up with the COVID effect as well. If these supply chains start to break up, then you could have shortages of particular goods depending on the particular supply chain and where you live. That's on top of the tariffs. And so all tariff negotiations would end up where every country is essentially pulling on their strategic partnerships. And it would kind of really realign. For example, you'd imagine Japan probably trying to realign with China, thinking that the US is no longer the best partner in these tariff negotiations. So it would impact everybody. It's like a combination of the global financial crisis with COVID, with the inflation that came after, the Ukraine-Russia conflict. I'll add one more point as well. There are a couple of countermeasures that I think both China and US could deploy, which would be to try and get the price of oil down. So America has rebuilt up its strategic reserve, but it would take 2 months if they couldn't persuade, other big players in the Middle East to engage in that. Saudi, the petrodollar, at the end of the day, Saudi and Iran are neighbors. They have a regional vision, whether they hate each other, love each other. It would really force a picking of sides, and that would be pretty bad on that relationship. But America has about 6 million barrels on reserve that it could try and control prices with. That's what Biden did last time. And China's been preparing for this. It's got the largest reserves it's ever had. So it could strategically use those reserves, and it could outlast America in terms of the reserves that it's actually built up. So that would impact the trade war negotiations as well.
Yep. Real quick on that, and I kept saying Straits of Hormuz. Straits of Hormuz. This was the red line, or the line in the sand. That was the final thing I was praying would not happen, but it looked like it was going to. And why did I keep focusing on that? It's called The Influence of Sea Power by A.T. Mahan. That is the entire doctrine of the United States Navy. Actually, the Navy, the world's learned that. If we must have absolute control of all, ALL, 70% of the world, the United States Navy controls 70% of the world's oceans. There are critical choke points. The Straits of Hormuz, that's like every naval officer is brainwashed with that, especially when you're operating in the 7th or 5th Fleet or even 6th Fleet, Straits of Hormuz. Now, and of course the Suez Canal, but that's a different animal. But when this happens, because that aircraft carriers today in the United States Navy are obsolete, I'm sorry, I'm speaking the truth, because even now our submarine assets are very limited, and we must use long standoff tactic or missiles, the Tomahawks and whatnot, cruise missiles. So where am I going with this? We are now pushed into a corner, and that's what Chad said, and I agree 100%, and Hassan has said it. Folks, it will be, when the gloves come off, it's going to go high level, and this is where mutual assured destruction crazy stuff comes in. And I'm not some doomsday speaker, but there's nowhere else to go here. Both sides are being pushed into a corner.
Agreed, yeah. And if the Fed tries to do some emergency action and increase short-term rates, it really could push, because if the long-term rates increase and the short-term rates, that's going to really impact the mortgage market. The cost of borrowing is going to have it will have a major impact in the mortgage market in the US. All right, let's Truth, did you haven't got your hand up anymore? Did you want to say something, or should we go to some other hand?
Yeah, I've been waiting. Oh, on mic, someone else jumps in, right? So I'm supposed to respond. Hey, who cares? That aside. The other factor that's not being discussed that I've been able to confirm is Russia has moved multiple of its strategic bombers, the Tupolev, the 95s, the 22s, the 160s, about 410 miles off the coast of Alaska in the event of. Why would they do that when they're currently dealing with a conflict in Ukraine, 4,000 miles away. Well, and conveniently on June 12th, day before the attack, and yes, they are nuclear capable. They can absolutely carry nuclear warheads. In the event of, so the U.S. goes nuclear, Russia goes nuclear, and they're right next door to America. So F around and find out is what I say. And they're the Anniversity base, in case you're wondering where. And they're absolutely there and on call, waiting for that call. They'll make a call too if they need to. So, but yeah, you keep believing those aircraft carriers are going to make a difference. You didn't know that part either, of course. And yeah, Russia and Iran do work in tangent. They, of course, share a lot of security information. But keep living in delusion. It's working out well for you. The only other points I'll add, because I don't want to keep repeating myself on what modern warfare is to people who have no idea what it is to want to live in delusion, or ones that just want to sim for those that they're in delusion as well, because it makes them feel good, is that, look, Russia and Iran have both proven that this fallacy, this fiction of, this U.S. invincibility has been shattered. I'm sorry, it's just not what it was. And just saying I have nukes, well, Russia, I'm trying to have more nukes. Russia has more nukes on its own. That doesn't mean anything. What does matter is who can win on the battlefield consistently over a longer period of time in a war of attrition. Russia's proven it can take out all of NATO, more or less on its own, with some help from Iran, some help from China, and some help from North Korea. But doing the dirty work itself, despite all the help the Ukraine's received, it's a proxy war. I mean, Ukraine's had hundreds of thousands of mercenaries by this point. They've lost over 1 million troops that nobody talks about. But no one cares, because who cares? They don't even care where they end up getting buried, because BlackRock's now stated, since they've taken over about half the country, you can't even bury them in Ukrainian soil, because that soil might contain some precious metals. So don't get in the way. Don't let the human bodies rot away somewhere else, so that the Jews can maximize on what they can obtain from the soil. So yeah, let's not have that conversation.
I agree with almost everything Truth said. Just one.
Dude, I wasn't looking for your
I don't care.
validation.
I don't care. I'm just talking to the
You've
group,
already
because you're not
proven
the
who
only
you are.
person
You can
here.
go blame Nazi
I'm
firms.
talking now.
Hey,
I'm talking.
No,
You
well,
said
it's not
your
your
bit.
turn,
You
though.
said your bit, little
Look
child.
at a turn.
Move on.
I'm not finished yet.
Well,
Hey,
you
little
talk
man,
too much,
little man,
and
go
you
sim
gotta let
go sim
someone
for the
else try.
Soviet Jews who you think actually won World War II. Go sim for them. Reality is the world collaborated against National Socialist Germany, just like more or less most of the world collaborated against Russia, and it seems like Iran as well, because they want to ensure that they enter the global community on their terms. I mean, that's just not going to happen. And nobody wants to live like a debt slave and have a Rothschild bank and Trump towers on the crown. You can wait, bud. You have nothing
You've got
important to say
nothing
anyway.
to
You're
say
no
at all.
nothing.
You're just
Why you're so
repeating
eager to
yourself
jump in?
since morning.
You've got nothing to value to add
Repeat.
other than lies from the past. You've been taught to hate the Nazis, knowing nothing about them, and love the Soviet Jews because you sim for Jews. That's who you are. You've already presented. Sure, bud. Well,
Come on,
I'm
man.
sorry, but
Why
you're
did you get up
interrupting.
like this
You don't know
morning?
what I'm going to say.
Go and change your
You don't
nappy.
know what
Let
I'm
someone
going
else
to
Guys,
say.
can we
talk
go
and
with
come
ad
back.
hominem here?
Hey, big guy. Can you, Simon? Can you please mute this little man? He's got low impulse control, like the
Yeah,
chimp that
let's
he
stick
is.
to today
Right.
as well. Let's
So
not
you-
go through your history.
So
Right, guys. Again, it's too much arguing about like irrelevant stuff. I just want to welcome Myron to the stage. Myron, how you doing?
What's up, guys? What's up? I literally still haven't slept. I stayed up all night after the stream, and I, went and came back on. I saw Pete Hegseth was doing a press conference. Went through it, kind of broke it down. It's very evident that this press conference was to, number one, create some level of deterrence, show use of force, show capability, send a message, and at the same time, kind of make the base feel a bit more comfortable that, because Pete Hegseth during the entire thing was saying, hey, it was a precise attack. We didn't get hit. We didn't hit anybody else. We just targeted the nuclear facilities. Then we left. That was all we did. So it's very obvious that, the Trump administration is going to try to minimize their involvement, say we just did one thing and we got the hell out of there. So, they're already beginning the damage control now, because obviously a large part of the base, does not like that he went ahead and attacked Iran. So, I'm sure you guys probably already talked about this, but the foreign ambassador, I think his name is Abbas, I can't pronounce his last name, but he's meeting with Putin today. So, he had a scheduled meeting with Putin, and he's not just meeting with a Russian ambassador. No, he's sitting down with Vladimir Putin himself. So that's, and when he talked about it, he said, yeah, we're going to discuss, strategic situations, which we all know in geopolitical talk, that means military/intelligence capability. So we'll see what happens, man. I know that the Strait of Hormuz just got shut down. I know that happened maybe 20 minutes ago or so. The parliament announced this from Iran. So this isn't good. And we've been talking about this for weeks now at this point. And I think Americans are they don't realize what the fuck is going on. They're over here sitting like, yeah, bomb Iran, let's go. But once they get to the gas pump and realize that their, gas is up $2 on fucking Monday, that might start to set into reality.
Yeah, Myron, and the return to inflation. If this escalates in the direction it's going, this would be just a repeat, if not worse, than the Russia-Ukraine situation. There is inherent weakness in the banking system. There's a difference right now. The Fed can't actually control the long-term rates, and it's trying to refinance $10 trillion of debt. So the on-the-ground impact will be a return to inflation, a global financial crisis, but this time I think it would be stagflation. It would be declining growth. It would be, we don't know what would happen with the job market, but under declining growth, that always leads to decreases in employment, but also rising inflation. That's an economy that most people haven't experienced before. The last time we had that was in the 70s. So if you weren't around in the 70s and you don't know what that feels like, nothing you have experienced will be like that. But we are at a point where there is also record division, extreme popularism at the moment. There is campaigns around record dissatisfaction. We've got record drug addictions, record depression, record wealth inequality. So all of these things at the same time as going through stagflation, it can only lead to civil unrest. So this will certainly impact people. So if you are cheering on a war right now, the terms of engagement is probably not understood by you. We've made it very clear that there is no longer a superior power in this region, in these battles. And so therefore, the impact on the average American is going to be severe. It is going to be felt. And I think people are the least equipped they have ever been to experience what might come next. It will impact everybody if this doesn't, de-escalate in the right direction.
Simon, did you see that comment that Suleiman posted?
Which one?
Where it was a quote from U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. We believe that what we have done will have to have a clear psychological impact on Iranians' outlook on the future. Really? Within a few hours, they struck Israel even harder. What psychological impact did that have? I mean, this is the level of delusion that exists within Trump's cabinet right now, leading him to believe, you did it, man. Great job.
Do you see the comment from J.D. Vance? It was even worse than that. It's on my page. I forgot what it was, but I'm just paraphrasing, but something along the lines of like, Iran don't know how to fight a war.
But I mean, it's comments like these, when they say it out in the open, I don't know what they're saying behind closed doors, but this is what they're repeating to Trump, leading him to believe these strikes were successful and they have a deterrent effect, when clearly Iran just proved they didn't. And now it's just a matter of what, besides shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, which will cause, an economic disaster, but striking as well the U.S. bases, then clearly they've miscalculated. It's another fallacy of judgment on the U.S.'s part. That's certainly not a reflection of, supremacy and invincibility when you keep making mistakes. But then they don't. Unfortunately, some individuals don't want to have that conversation. Even if you have good weapons, if you don't know how to use them and you don't know how to use them at a strategic time, you're using them against the wrong enemy, who's not really an enemy anyway, just because the Jews tell you they are, then you're making a lot of mistakes, and it's an empire in decline. And all that imperialism that people talk about, that they say it's worth pursuing, sorry, that's leading to failure. And Simon already pointed out all of the economic metrics that show that, unfortunately, the U.S. is on its way down. If you're not willing to call out weaknesses within your own country, then you're not going to do anything to solve it. You're not going to admit that, the education system's weak, there's too much depression, there's too much poverty, there's too many suicides every day, and there's too much crime. What are you doing about it? Well, you're making it worse because you've got the power allowing things to happen.
So, Truth, I know you're very familiar, obviously, with, Eastern European politics and, Russia and Ukraine and that whole situation as well. Obviously, there's going to be a meeting in Moscow, right, to discuss strategy and kind of go from there. And my chat's been asking me this as well with China. Given the, significant provocation that just happened yesterday with the bombing of the nuclear sites, despite the fact that the Trump administration is going to try to minimize it over the next several days. You know, oh, just targeted, it was right beside, blah, blah, right? We finished the job, the Israelis started. What do you think the ramifications are going to be of potential Chinese and/or Russian involvement? We know Russia's in the middle of a conflict now. They didn't bail out Bashar al-Assad. Do you think they're going to also take that non-interventionist approach with Iran as well, or are they too valuable of an ally?
Myron, I'm really afraid to butt in. The meeting has already happened. Russia agreed.
Yes,
Hey,
me
bro.
supplying.
Hey.
What is
Russia has
he
agreed.
thinks his
Who's that?
opinion
Yeah.
Sorry
Dude,
about that.
your
The
mic.
meeting's already happened.
Mine?
Hey, dude, your mic really sucks. Sorry, man. Like, it sounds like you're underwater or some shit. I'd be happy to hear your opinion too, but I was asking Truth. Tell her. And then you can fix your mic. Go ahead, bro. What do you think?
Okay. So number one, just on the premise, like Syria is not Iran. Iran's a much more capable country, and Syria went through 14 years of trying. They asked for Iran and Russia's help. Then they told them to leave because they wanted to normalize relations with the Gulf states. That was a mistake on Assad's part. Iran offered to expand its help, set up a front, for instance, in the Golan Heights. Syria said no, because again, they wanted money from the Gulf states. The Gulf states said, hey, get rid of Iran and Russia and then we'll give you money. They set them up. They set them up for failure. So that was a mistake on Syria's leadership. Iran's not begging anyone for money. They have the ability to sustain themselves during tough times. They've figured out how to evade sanctions, even though Syria's actually had sanctions longer than Iran has since the 1970s. But and for a while they were okay for first 10, 11 years until 2011. But they couldn't figure out how to circumvent sanctions, and unfortunately just got themselves in that debt they couldn't manage anymore. So they're looking for handouts. So that was part of the reason why they failed. Now going back to this meeting you're discussing today, it's with Dr. Arakchi, the foreign minister, and it's going to be held in Moscow to discuss strategy. Again,
And
what
he's
Russia
talking
and
directly
Iran
with
have said
Putin.
is a
That's kind of like he's not talking with his equivalent. He's actually talking to Putin himself, which is obviously interesting as well. That's a big deal. But sorry.
So look, I don't know if you heard, but Israel struck the Natanz base very recently, and Russia said, hands off that base. We have our engineers there. If we strike that base, there's going to be a problem. Don't know how Russia's going to react. We can only speculate. So let me be clear. I don't have access to any insider information. I don't know. I have an idea what they're going to discuss. I don't know what they plan to do because they keep their cards tight. We have to judge on actions, not on words. What they say out loud doesn't always follow what they end up doing. But what they do have is a mutual understanding of who the common enemy is and what the problem is here. And obviously it's Israel that's getting in the way and of what Iran, China, and Russia are trying to do, which is just carry out peaceful trade relations and expand their trade relations within their BRICS community and their Belt and Road Initiative communities. But that's a problem for the U.S. and others, and Israel as well, because they don't want to see, say, China, Russia, Iran thrive. They would rather them succumb to their imperial model, which they don't want because they want to secure their autonomy. So China will seek to protect its interests within Iran because it's created in Iran a major transit hub that goes along multiple corridors and significantly saves it on cost and time. Trade time goes from 30 days to 15 days. That's huge for China, and it's much safer for China because it bypasses all of the U.S. checkpoints, sanctions, countries that can impede or slow down China's growth. China definitely wants to protect that, and plus they're importing 2 million barrels of oil per day from Iran. In terms of Russia, I mean, they share a border next door. They share tech. Iran's still helping Russia with its its proxy war in Ukraine. They've actually introduced even the second generation drones, the 238s that they were recently used, and they're working pretty effectively against Ukraine. But one thing that happened with Operation Spiderweb is Russia noticed all the parallels with what took place on June 13th for Iran. So they know that it's Mossad that operated both within Russia when they carried out that train bombing and those 2 bridges that got blown up. Those are Mossad attacks, through Zelensky, of course. And they see it also happen in Iran. So they're sharing intel on how to sweep all the Mossad terrorist cells. They're going to absolutely discuss that further.
Yeah, I was going to say,
also probably go through
a lot of people don't, and that's important that you mention that, because that operation that Ukraine, the SBU, successfully pulled off a couple weeks ago, it's damn near fucking identical to what Iran did, to what Israel did last week. Getting guys behind enemy lines, having a drone program damn near set up behind enemy lines. It's literally the same exact operation that Ukraine pulled off a couple weeks ago against Russia and destroyed a lot of their fighter jets.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, Russia has so does China. They have massive spy satellite networks in the sky. They're going to share intelligence. They're going to review what's probably taken place in the last week, how to proceed going forward. Even though the U.S. can't really figure out an off-ramp at some point, they probably will figure something out. Perhaps it'll entail a Palestinian solution as well. I don't know how comprehensive they want it to be, but I believe it'll absolutely entail securing their own borders and also eliminating, the Mossad terrorist problem that exists in both of their countries. At the end of the day, they do want peace, and they just want to be able to trade freely.
So,
They're not
what do you
looking to
think,
dominate
Truth?
the world.
We kind of. So, what do you think is going to be like the next step here? So we know that they're more than likely going to talk about, obviously, the drone attack that damn near is, a mirror image of what the Mossad pulled off in Iran versus what the Ukrainians pulled off in Russia with the sneak attack drones. But what do you think they're going to talk about besides that, getting rid of these Mossad rings, etc., that have infiltrated their countries? As far as like pursuant to the U.S. attack, I mean. Do you think Russia or China are going to make a significant contribution to assisting Iran in the situation, or is it too risky? And I was kind of talking about this with my chat, where I kind of said, because this is like the number one question my chat's asking me, hey, do you think China or Russia is going to intervene? And the question I asked was, well, they can always intervene. The real question is Iran enough of a vital strategic partner to warrant intervening against the United States and Israel, who are both capable world powers? I guess that's the real question to ask. Is Iran to that level of an ally that they need to do that?
I believe they are. They're a strategic trade partner and also a military partner for Russia as well. And again, they share a border next door. And there's no way that Russia wants to see Iran get taken over or balkanized and have another threat next to its border. So for that reason, it matters to Russia. Plus, they appreciate the help they've been getting on Ukraine.
Yeah.
But that aside, it's not just about the thanks. Now, with respect to the U.S. attack and what they may discuss, I think Iran already has a plan for that. It never hurts to reach out to your friends and see what they think as well, because they probably have an idea of maybe 3 of the bases they want to strike to start. I'm just throwing a random number. It could be 4 or 5. It could be just one. I don't know which one. Maybe the ones in Iraq, maybe the ones in the Gulf states. They have options, and it's good to have options, but you want to make it count, especially since it's the first one. Besides, them shutting down the Straits of Hormuz, there might be a discussion on that too. But again, all we can do is speculate here. Nobody knows for sure. But look, with Iran, I know that I think you readily accept that Russia and China are world powers capable of defending themselves. What the world doesn't want to accept is, well, perhaps Iran is also more than just a regional power, and they can also defend themselves, and they'll ask for help when they need it. As Putin put it, Iran hasn't asked us for any help. They even wanted to go about establishing their own air defense system, system infrastructure that they have. But of course, they share intel, they share technology, and they're sharing data as well. And Iran watched closely during the Russia-Ukraine, the proxy war that's been taking place there, to also help refine and innovate on their own military-industrial complex.
So you don't foresee you don't foresee like an actual real military intervention from the Russian perspective, because it doesn't seem as though Iran needs to play that card at this moment. Is that kind of what your gist is on it?
Not at the moment, because of what took place. I mean, they took out 3 bases, they didn't take out anything really. They claimed they took out 3 nuclear sites. They didn't. They're still operational, and all the we already know the fissile material, the centrifuges were all moved. They're essentially decommissioned for the most part. So it's not like this was a game changer of a strike. Of course, it violated the airspace sovereignty. They have right of response, etc. Legally, they'll go about the legal channel, tell the UN, hey, we've been attacked. We have a right of response, and they will. They absolutely will. Will they be able to do it independently of help from China? I believe they'll want to do it independently to show the world we can stand on 2 feet. We don't need anybody to step in and help us, like the Jews in Israel that are bending a knee right now and begging for help from the Germans, the Brits, the French, and the Hassans of the world that simp for them all day and think that they're still a superpower. They're not.
So let me ask you this:
they've shown the world that they're weak and feeble.
That's a good point you mentioned. That obviously them retaliating on their own is a good show of strength, and bringing in the Russians and Chinese, right now might be burning favors that don't need to be burned. So I guess wartime strategizing this. What do you think the direct next move is going to be? Do you think they're going to attack? We already know. We called it. Strait of Hormuz has been shut down. Boom. Okay, that's step 1. What do you think is the step?
No, that's the end game. That's the end game.
Hold on.
They didn't shut down the Strait of Hormuz.
If Abraham, just a sec. If they shut down, or when they officially, I know it's going through their own legal process to do it.
Apparently, it was agreed upon at the parliament.
More like they do things more like a democracy. They do things more like a democracy than Trump does, who just acts unilaterally outside of congressional approval. But that aside, if that doesn't trigger an American response, then who looks weak? America has to respond to that, because that's escalation right away without even firing a bullet. The best way to hurt America is economy with finance. Now you're gonna make output. You're gonna make oil prices skyrocket and natural gas as well. And it's also a show of force, because the U.S. thought that it could forever enforce the Straits of Hormuz and force Iran to keep it open. But if they can't stop them from closing it, that's an L for the U.S. So they have to react just based on that move alone. That striking the bases, they're still going to do that separately. But I'm just saying, they're already making the first chess move by shutting down the Straits of Hormuz. Assuming they do it, they follow through on what they've said. They've said it. I believe they will. They're just going to right now. The time that they're buying is to buy the reinforcement to be able to counter whatever the U.S. may come up with. Because again, they've been watching. They know exactly what's there with the U.S. They've been watching as the U.S. Carriers and the fighter jets have been helping defend against the drones and missiles. So they're fully aware. They've collected the data on what U.S. assets are in the area at the moment. So I do believe that they will shut it down and be prepared for that reaction. In addition, then catching the U.S. off guard and striking the bases. So it's an interesting order of events. They'll let the U.S. make another mistake, and then we're going to hit the bases when they're active, because we're going to see them. Because, well, where are they going to come from, right? The assets are going to be likely fighter jets from one of the carriers, or they could be, We'll see what the U.S. decides to pull. Will they go nuclear? Probably not at this time, because let's not forget, you've got multiple Russian bombers 410 miles off the coast of Alaska. They could be activated at any time and catch the U.S. off guard and hopefully not go there. Let's all hope there's no nuclear war.
Yeah, from what I'm reading right now, and this is literally like kind of hot off the press 30 minutes ago, the parliament has approved it if they do it. And I'm looking here, seems as though the strait's never been closed before. But yeah, no, man, I mean, this is obviously...
Myron, they recommended. They didn't say do it. They just said, we recommend.
Yeah, they approved. I read that, yeah.
Not approved. Brother, they cannot approve. They said we recommend. That's it. And we will leave the decision to the Supreme National Security Council.
Guys, can I bring in some experience? I think Thomas is on the stage. He DM'd us for direct experience in national security, particularly Iran. Do you want to bring in your experience here?
Yeah, guys. You can Google me and check my credentials. I've worked Iran for almost the last 20 years. I know the culture. I know the culture. I also know.
And this is literally 24 minutes ago. They said.
I also know truth. I know the culture very well. I know the language. I know the people. I know the history. I also know extremely well their military capabilities. Extremely well, all the way down to their clandestine capability all across the globe. I know the names of Qasem Soleimani's ex-girlfriends. So I know Iran. I literally helped plan all of our options for many years on how you destroy the Iranian regime. And I believe that, we talk about closing moves as if that's, the Iranian end game scenario. Truth's been saying they've been preparing for this for years. Well, we know where every one of their fast attack boats are. We know where all their mine laying vessels are. We know where all of every single one of their imaginary 10,000 ships.
Thomas,
we know where they are all at.
Thomas, when you say we, are you referring to America?
Yes. Yes, and in all likelihood, we share that information with the Israelis.
How many microsubs do they have?
We know where every one of their microsubs are.
That's why Israel did so well.
Listen. I'm telling you, you need to listen. I work in the community, have worked in the community for years. We know where all of their stuff is, okay? And here is what I believe will probably happen. This is a guess. This is what I would do. I would lure the Iranians into deploying their navy to close the Straits of Hormuz. Because of the economic threat that poses to the world, the US, the French, the British, everybody will be incentivized to annihilate the Iranian navy. Once the Iranian navy is destroyed and once the Iranian ballistic missile capability is destroyed, then we've done exactly what has been planned for decades. To put Iran back in their little box. The only thing that kept us from doing that in the past, and this is very, very important, the only thing that kept us from doing that in the past was that they had Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Lebanese Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Now, there's no Palestinian Islamic Jihad, there's no Hamas, there's no Lebanese Hezbollah. This is the perfect opportunity. No, this is, listen to what I'm telling you. This is the perfect opportunity because Iran for decades has been able to rely on their asymmetric power projection capability. That is no longer in existence. Because of that, this is a perfect time for Israel to behead the regime and turn the country of Iran over to the Iranian people. It's a theocracy. The Iranian people do not want the supreme leader anymore. It's an antiquated system. The regime needs to go. And the first thing you got to do that is you gotta
Thomas,
destroy their missile capability.
Let's get some refutes. It sounded like a Netanyahu.
Speaks for the monarch.
Let's Truth. Do you want to respond to the Netanyahu script?
Yeah, that's amusing to me. So what you just heard there is the perspective of the monarchists who were known for what? Ripping off the country before they fled. You know, after there was a revolution there to.
You're not answering the question,
right
Thomas. You can refute afterwards.
Yeah, well, you never really asked a question. You just spit out some bullshit. So I reject the whole premise of your question anyway. So let's address that first, and then we'll see if there's much of a question left. I don't believe there is. Look, what you just spat out there was just a bunch of gibberish and nonsense. It was the hope that both Netanyahu and the West had when they first attacked Iran, that there would just be an uprising. And, you know, even Netanyahu did a speech in Farsi to try to get the Iranian dissidents to rise up against the government. You know what that did? After you killed women and children in their country, it fully united the country. Now they support their government even more. Now they want to they're standing up again. They want to stand up against tyranny and against Israel and against America. That's what you just did. It was a complete failure and a disaster of a policy to think that you were going to divide the country by striking in and killing their women and children. But that's the kind of psychopath mentality some retards like you have. And go ahead and think you know where everything is. If you know where everything is, why don't you just strike it? You tried to strike the nuclear sites. You couldn't do that. That was a fail. Trump can claim all the glory he likes. You can't strike the nuclear sites. You didn't even strike the missile sites. Guess what? They're also out of reach. And beyond the access of the best bunker busters. The world knows that. Except Trump is just still wants to believe a political scientist over physicists and engineers because that's the kind of retard he is. The MAGA-tards like you believe in unconditionally. Yeah, you know where everything is. Sure you do. If you knew where everything was, you strike it and take it out. And if you think that Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ are the reasons why, they're the reason. Do you think that presented asymmetric warfare? They're still there. After what? Since 10/7, Israel still hasn't been able to take them out. In fact, Hamas, based on the testimony of the Israeli ex-defense minister, they've grown stronger and they're bigger. So that was a fail. They're still there. Hezbollah is still there. They're just trying to work out the conflict they have from within with the corrupt government, which I think is a mistake. But they're still very much there. They've barely expended a fraction of what they are. Less than 5% has been touched. Again, that's based on Israeli military intelligence. So Hezbollah is still there. Is Ansarallah canceled out? Does that still represent asymmetric warfare that you mentioned? Yes, they do. Do you know what naval specialists in the U.S. stated about Ansarallah? They were so tough and so hard, they kept striking us. They struck out carriers, even the ones that are honest enough to admit it, that we had to make a deal with them. Please just stop touching our stuff. Go ahead in Israel. God, you think they'd make a deal like that if they could take them out? So if you can't take out Ansarallah, why the hell do you, why in God's green earth do you think you have any shot at trying to neutralize Iran that's spent the last 40 plus years with the human capital and all the natural resources to build up a formidable army that you just want to underestimate and think, oh, they just have some 67 battleships. Who knows about the subs? You know nothing about the microsubs that are one of the most advanced in the world, that are fast and can evade some of the best sonar systems in the world. You don't know shit. That's the problem. And they may or may not have a nuke. They probably do. I think they've been testing because you know 3 earthquakes in a week in different areas. I just don't believe it. And I know the region is prone to earthquakes. I'm familiar with the region as well. What I can tell you is one of them was absolutely a nuclear test, and they likely have it, but they don't need it now because they're not going to tell you what their 10th move's going to be. So you're going to go incrementally, and it'll be a death of 1,000 cuts. So while you sit there and you want to pontificate that, yeah, it's an easy call, we know where everything is, they shut down the Straits of Hormuz, we'll expose their navy and we'll wipe it out with one shot. Sure, just like you took out 1/3 of Russia's navy as well, and you're winning in Russia too, right? It's Ukraine that's winning the battle there. Keep standing by the Jews. They keep feeding you this delusional nonsense. Well, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. You think it's an easy road ahead? Cool, go for it. All Trump's done is make mistakes. His policy's been a royal disaster, and he continues to lie and gaslight his audience into believing we successfully dismantled Iranian's nuclear power. Sure, you can believe that. They don't care. They don't. If you knew anything about the region and the culture, you know they don't have an ego. They don't care to counter you or get into these like petty debates and think, yeah, well, we need to one up the U.S. now. No, they're going to strike back proportionally because it's their legal right to do so. They're not there to flex, to impress their audiences like idiots like Trump do. You know, the apprentice guy. Oh, you're fired, bro. Okay, the guy who's been bankrupted 4 times and faced personal bankruptcies until the Rothschild Bank came and bailed him out. He's been owned by them ever since. And that's what every U.S. politician faces. Ownership by AIPAC and the Jewish lobbies and the Jewish banksters. You understand? They're the ones that control the U.S. The U.S. is so tough and mighty. I wish they were. Except that, unfortunately, there isn't enough fight back against the Jewish problem. And that's what will liberate the U.S. That's what should be the focus, rather than thinking you know it all with outdated military equipment. Because that's what's going to lead to disaster and end of the empire. Thank you.
We heard the exact same thing in the first Gulf War, the same thing against Iraq.
Is it my turn, Simon? Can I speak now?
Could we get so we get Thomas's voice, and then Ibrahim, you can come in after, just so we mix up the narratives. Go on, Thomas.
Hey,
you really need to hear more.
Well,
of that
I don't know. I can't
Simon.
take it, but let's hear what he's got to say, and then you can crush him.
If you gotta call yourself special, it means you're not special.
Yeah, you had to give his CV when he came up. But Thomas, what do you want to say? All right, speak now, or we're going to move over to Ibrahim.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm here. I try and make a very distinct difference between the Iranian regime and the Iranian people. We don't have a problem with the Iranian people.
Right,
culture is fantastic. Okay? So, but what I would ask your audience to do,
facts, not the propaganda, not the.
I am. I'm gonna address the propaganda specifically. Okay.
Your propaganda.
Listen very closely to truth, and listen to how much is anti-Semitic rhetoric and hatred for Trump.
Come on, you sound like Netanyahu. Focus on the argument. Just listen very closely to what percentage of the dialogue from truth is anti-Semitic. Thomas,
he's a plant in America, probably.
Are you going to focus on the issue?
Yeah, I am focused on the issues. I'm telling you, I do it all day long.
You can talk about the issue.
I'm telling you, do not listen to this guy who's telling you there's 10,000 imaginary ships.
Last chance.
And listen, and that their micro subs are the most advanced in the world. Okay, they're not. Okay, they're like extremely primitive. Okay, it's a great asymmetric capability, but we know where they're at. We know where they're all at. We can identify them. They're very easy to find.
Where are they?
We know where they're at.
Take them out.
Why take them out now? We don't. There's no reason to. There's no reason to.
Oh, there's no reason to. Okay.
There isn't. They're not. They don't. They don't pose it. They don't pose a threat. Go ahead.
So Thomas, you think they're just okay?
You can strike the subs like you struck the nuclear subs.
So Thomas, you think they're okay with just coming after Israel right now? And...
Wait, I'm sorry. Do I think that they're what?
Oh, I guess you believe that nothing's happening within Israel right now, right?
No, I'm sure there are things happening in Israel, but this is a war between Israel and Iran. It always has been. It's been going on for decades. This is not new.
Thomas, the
but
Iranians,
I think that
Thomas, the Iranians build. Wait. They build primitive ships but advanced missiles. Is this what you're telling me?
No. What I'm saying is that their micro subs are not the most advanced technology in the world. Okay, they're extremely primitive.
Missiles in the U.S.
They're
are there hypersonic missiles primitive?
Their hypersonic missiles aren't even actually quite hypersonic. Okay, they call them hypersonic, but they're not hypersonic.
Thomas,
they're
that's
not
ridiculous.
No,
What
they're
are they?
not.
What
They're
are
not.
they? What's a
Thomas,
hypersonic
that's
missile?
ridiculous.
Hey, Thomas, what's a
Because
hypersonic missile?
they don't
Define it.
they
What is it?
they go really fast,
Since you
but
know
they
it's
are
not,
not.
what is it?
They also cannot do.
How fast do they go? How fast
Li-
does a hypersonic missile
listen,
qualify to be
if you
hypersonic?
will listen, I
You
will
listen.
tell
Why don't you
you
answer the question?
they
Since
are.
you're the one spreading
Listen, they
expertise. What's a hypersonic
they are
missile?
not capable of doing. I'm telling you.
I'm waiting. What's a
I'm
hypersonic
telling you
missile?
right now.
Come on, Thomas.
Right, Thomas, you're giving a lot of trust me, bro. Could you, if you have any expertise on hypersonic missiles, could you share your expertise on hypersonic missiles? Because you're just giving a lot of, this could be Netanyahu speaking at the moment, or, so if you you came up and said that you have a lot of credibility, and all you're saying is trust me, bro, trust me, bro. Can you demonstrate your expertise and tell us why Iranian hypersonic missiles are nothing to worry about?
I didn't say they weren't nothing to worry about. I never said that. I said that they are actually not the state-of-the-art hypersonic missiles.
What's a hypersonic missile?
Listen, let me answer the question.
Hurry up and Google it. Come on, Thomas.
I don't.
Thomas, you're looking really bad
Look,
here.
look,
Thomas, can you answer Truth's question? What's a hypersonic missile?
Truth. You guys.
Come on, you've had plenty of time to Google it.
I've said.
Slow typer. Type with one.
What I needed to say. Otherwise, this conversation with Truth is a complete waste of time.
Just use AI. Come on, you know how to use AI?
You guys don't even know who this ass clown is. Okay? You don't even know who this ass clown is if you're listening to it.
Okay, guys, this is just becoming unbearable to listen to. Listen, Thomas, finish your point. Truth, stop interrupting. It's just unlistenable. Let him make his point, and then I'll get somebody a chance to respond. It doesn't have to be Truth. It could be anybody else. Thomas, your argument's ridiculous. No one knows who you are either. Just make the point. One second, Thomas. Let me finish. Make your point, because what you're doing is you keep mentioning his name, and then you're bringing him into the situation. I don't really care about your opinion on Truth. I don't really care about what you think about him. It's irrelevant to me, and it's irrelevant to the audience. In terms of your argument about the hypersonic missiles, explain your argument in relation to why you think A, it's not the most advanced tech, and B, you made the statement, quote, it's not really hypersonic. So please explain those points, and then I will give it to somebody. Sam, I will give it to somebody to rebut your argument. Maybe Andrew, just to get some kind of variation in the conversation. Go ahead.
Okay, if I can, without interruption, I will happily answer your question. They do go very fast and they go hypersonic speed, but the problem is that they don't have the last second trajectory adjustments, the capabilities that the Russians, the Chinese, and the US have. So they are not quite as advanced. They are their most advanced missile capability, okay? But they are not quite as advanced as the US, the Russians, and the Chinese. No, when I said they were primitive, I was talking about the micro subs. The micro subs are not the most advanced submarines in the world.
One thing at a time, but just that specific argument you made, you didn't make the argument that they're not hypersonic. You kind of said they are hypersonic, but they're not as advanced as American, Russian, or Chinese technology.
No, my understanding is they don't go actually to the speed with which the Russians, the Chinese, and the U.S. go. So they are hypersonic, but they're not. They don't have the. I can't think of the terminology right now. The last. I'm not a missile expert. I'm a human intelligence, counterintelligence guy. But my point is, my point is they do pose a threat to Israel, but I think it's a manageable threat over time. It'll be fine. This is a war between Israel and Iran.
How is it manageable? How is it being managed?
Because
it's being managed. Why is Israel still getting decimated? Why is it being managed?
I'm still being interrupted, guys. I don't know why you guys allow this in your space. It's the most obnoxious space I've been in, because this guy he has no respect for anybody, and you guys still listen to him. My point is, my name, my reputation, who I am, what I've done is all out in public. You guys are listening to a guy you don't even know who he is.
Thomas,
don't listen.
Thomas. Right, I'm gonna move on from you, because the problem is I keep telling you not to make it personal to Truth, and then obviously he's gonna jump in and respond. So the fact that you are specifying things to him is actually causing the issue in terms of the argument. First thing. The second thing is your appeal to authority isn't something that's accepted because we know authority can be can manipulate, and therefore all we care about is the substance of your argument. Hence why we're trying to look at your argument. The third point is in terms of your own expertise, you just admitted that your expertise isn't missiles, and therefore your position is more as a layman. And actually, your expertise is what you did you say? Human intelligence, counterintelligence, and essentially an intelligence operation. So there's more of a chance, based on your expertise, that you're doing an intel op on this base as opposed to anything else. So I think that's an important point to know. Now I've heard what you had to say. I want to hear Andrew's response because Andrew has got a significant amount of expertise as well. Go ahead, Andrew. What's your thoughts on what he said?
Okay, Thomas, no doubt you have your expertise in whatever areas, but the truth is what Truth is saying, and I've never met, I don't know Truth, but I've been listening to him for 2 weeks. We have all heard the bullshit rhetoric that you're spewing out. Now, please, let's be objective here, not personal, but the rhetoric that you're spewing is propaganda. It's pure Judaized propaganda. And immediately, I knew you were going to use the anti-Semitic. You're going to throw up the anti-Semitic card. And the minute you threw up that card, I said, bing, you're nailed. You are a talking propagandist, sir. You really are. Wake up. We heard this rhetoric in Gulf War I. I had skin in the game in the first Gulf War, okay? I lost a son in the Gulf War. I buried our men. I'm a retired naval officer, sir. Now, why are Colonel McGregor and the actual, I'm talking real men, not lap ponies, not lap dogs that just say whatever Trump says, how high they jump. Now, you can speak all of the rhetoric you want, but in the end of the day, you're just spewing rhetoric, propaganda.
Right, let's go to
well, Andrew, hold on real quick. Hold on. I'm actually interested, Andrew. Can you attack some of his arguments? I'd be happy to hear what you got to say here. You know, as far as
well, first of all, first of all, anytime you hear someone demeaning, and I mean seriously demeaning and putting down the capabilities of a potential enemy, looking at this militarily, the United States Navy here, anytime someone puts down someone as primitive as that right there raises 10 red flags. They're little mini submarines and whatnot. They're not primitive. The United States has been, in fact, in the 1990s, I retired from active duty 95, 96, consulting for years after that into 2000, but I stayed very closely engaged in consulting in Naval Institute. The United States Navy knew the carriers were dead. Those are dinosaurs. Even and I'm submarine warfare qualified, even our fast attacks in the Strait of Hormuz, I've talked over and over again in the Persian Gulf. We need to go technology, truth, and listening to Truth speaking. This young man has his facts straight. I'm listening to everything he's saying. So what this Thomas was saying about this, they got primitive, we know where everything is, we're going to take them out. That is that's all hypothetical, and that's a lot of, he's speaking without, it sounds like he's reading a script of some propaganda stuff. So putting down Iran like that is very dangerous.
But in terms of his specific argument that you believe is propaganda, so obviously he's admitted or conceded that they are hypersonic.
Okay.
And I guess his only point of contention in the end ended up becoming, once we teased out, his point was that Iran's missiles aren't as advanced as the US, China and Russia ones.
And basically, to be more specific, his argument also is that he's saying the hypersonic missiles that Iran deploys are not as sophisticated because when the warhead is supposed to detach from the main body of the weapon, it doesn't detach as, I guess, efficiently, where it starts to navigate and, kind of zigzag all across the air to avoid detection. That's what he was trying to say. Basically, when it detaches, it's not as sophisticated as combating air defense. That was what you're trying to say, right, Thomas? I see you giving a bunch of numbers. So I'm assuming that was your
Yes,
argument.
yes.
Not that
It's
this one has
it's
hypersonic,
terminal.
it's
Its
for
terminal
towers.
guidance systems. Its terminal guidance systems are not as advanced. It goes hypersonic speed, but its terminal guidance systems are not as advanced, and they're easier to defeat than U.S., China, or Russia.
All right, fair enough.
Well, then why
His
haven't
argument,
they-
his argument is basically at the last part, impact. It's not as sophisticated as China, U.S., Russia with evading, air defense because it doesn't squirm as much and, obviously throw off the radar as efficiently. That's his argument.
Tel Aviv disagrees with you, Thomas, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a pedantic argument. It's a hypersonic missile anyway, and we know that the Iron Dome struggles with those. So I think it's kind of a moot point to even go over this as far as clearly they've done damage to Iran, but sorry, to Israel. I guess, Thomas, so my thing is,